Welcome to Nerds of the Old Republic, the podcast where we drink and discuss nerdy fiction and where the bells mean points, but the points mean nothing. I'm Adam.
I am Sean.
And I'm Mike.
Today we're discussing Man Booker Prize winning author Marlon James' new book, Moon Witch Spider King, and we'll be pairing that with Tanduay. Am I saying that right? Tanduay?
I'm going to say yes, you're saying it right.
Thank you. That's the first time anyone on the show has said I'm saying it right. Tanduay Double Rum. But first, we want to thank our growing community of listeners and followers on social media. We especially want to thank the listening community at Good Pods, where we continue to rank highly among similar podcasts. Also, a special shout out to Podcast Overlord at PCast_OL and Pod Nation at Pod Nation Pods, who have helpfully promoted or retweeted us on Twitter. And we're recently joined by our friends at Back in My Day podcast to talk about Batman Returns. Oh man, that was so much fun.
That was cool.
Yeah, they are over at DayBackIn on Twitter and at DayBackIn on Instagram. Our thanks to the listeners who have posted reviews on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our show and the topics we discuss, please consider rating and reviewing us. It is a big help, seriously. And be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at Nerds of Old Republic. If you want to hear what we think about many other nerd-centric topics, don't forget to check out our More Than Just Books blog on Podbean. And of course, please rate and review us wherever you listen to our podcasts. So, once again, thank you to our listeners, new and old. If you want to read and watch along with us, our next cast will discuss the recent movie, I'm laughing already saying this title, Jiu-Jitsu, starring Nicolas Cage. That's right, of unbearable weight talent, Nicolas Cage.
Thank you for not calling that a film.
It
doesn't deserve that.
It's not a film. There's no auteur here. It's just fucking Nicolas Cage. No offense, Nick. And in June, we'll be discussing selection from Stephen King's collection. We have yet to make a decision there. We're going to actually leave y'all in the dark until we do. But we're going to go Stephen King. Mm-hmm. We're gonna do some short stories and his son's collection, Joe Hill's Full Throttle. So pick up Full Throttle from Joe Hill to read along, and we'll let you know on the socials about Stephen King collection, all right? So, gentlemen, shall we get into the drink for tonight? It has been staring at us in this gorgeous bottle in the center of this table for like the last 10 minutes, so we should get into this here.
Yes, we should.
For sure.
Indeed.
You want to just give the cork a pull, Mike, since you did the honors?
I don't know if it's a liquor bottle, so I don't know if we're going to get the cool pop, but let's see.
Yeah,
a little bit.
That sounded good.
All right.
Can I smell the cork?
Yo, please help yourself, yeah.
Pass the cork.
I feel like we're doing the delicious dish here from Saturday Night Live.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll do a few small tasting pours before we get into a proper pour.
No, I appreciate that. So we're going to try it neat first.
I love the color.
Yeah, it is
amber.
It's amber or a light caramel.
Oops.
Coats the glass nicely.
I just spilled about $8 of it here on the table here.
You can lick that up. It's okay.
I will.
We won't judge you.
No, the table's been freshly cleaned.
Hopefully the mic picks up some of the sound effects of that happening.
Wait, the varnish is bubbling up on the table.
It peeled it.
So,
Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, before we, take a sip here, let's tell the listeners what we're actually drinking. It's actually pronounced Tanduay.
See, thank you for letting me say it wrong 5 times.
And we chose a rum because we're discussing Marlon James, who is Jamaican. And after we bought the rum, I'll be honest, it was me. I discovered that this is actually from the Philippines and not from Jamaica. But rum is essential and often associated with Jamaican culture. So we doubled down. We're going to go with it anyway. And it's a double rum, which I bought after an impromptu tasting in a wine store. And it is a combination of 5-year and 16-year rums. It's a blend of the two, and they're aged in oak barrels. And I had a taste in the store and walked around the store convincing myself that I was not going to buy the bottle.
There were multiple texts from Mike saying, guys, check this out. I'm not going to buy it.
It's really good. Here's a picture.
Yep.
Not buying it.
No. Please tell my wife why I'm not buying this.
And then a picture of him in his car with the bottle of rum.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I've resisted it. I've held off for a couple of weeks, and I think now is the time. I think we should go ahead and taste this at last.
Thank God it's Friday.
All right.
Mm-hmm. That is the smoothest rum I've ever had.
This was my thinking as well.
Dear Lord.
It's just like notes of caramel and some vanilla. And that's it.
It vaguely resembles a whiskey.
It does.
I mean, if you gave this to me in a blind taste testing and you just told me this was a whiskey, I would think to myself, oh, all right, this is a sweeter sort of bourbon here, but I would believe you. It's close enough.
Yeah, you can taste the oak in that, and it's got that, back of your throat kind of warming sensation you get from a whiskey, not typically from a rum.
What's the proof on this?
That's a great question before we get to our next pour.
Before we pour 3 fingers.
It is 40% ABV.
Okay, so it's not crazy high.
No, that's about right. I mean, it's just got a great aftertaste. It's remarkably smooth.
Super mellow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like it. I mean, it's not cracking, but...
I was going to make a Cthulhu noise on accident, but yeah.
No.
Release the Kraken.
That's good for everyday drinking. This is special drinking.
Yeah, they refer to this as a sipping rum, and I would agree with that. This is not a mixer. This is a sipper.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoy this.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Cheers.
Indeed. Am I going too slow because I still have a taste and Sean's empty?
Adam, I think I poured you the most generous pour, and that was not intentional, but it works out because we are in your home recording studio here, and you don't have to drive, so bottoms up.
I do appreciate that very much. So
we like when you're well lubricated for the second cast.
I want to find that sweet spot where I can still enunciate my words, but be funny to myself. And there have been a few casts lately where the second one, I don't think people can understand what I'm saying. Pretty sure you have to slow me down to 75% on your podcatcher.
Instead of listening to it at double speed or speed and a half like people do, slow us down.
Yeah, you gotta. If you want to hear space between my words when I'm drunk, you really need to slow me down.
It's like a John Green YouTube video.
Oh my gosh, yes. He's really smart. You just gotta speak at half speed.
Respect to John Green, but I think his brain works and his mouth works faster than my brain and my ears.
Yeah, indeed. Getting to jiu-jitsu. Little spoiler. Speaking of speed, it's the only movie I've ever watched at 1.25 speed.
Oh, man.
That was smart, actually.
I
wish I would have thought of that.
Seems even more. Well, we'll save that.
We'll save that, but I'm just giving a little trailer for where I was at when I was watching jiu-jitsu there.
I think I need some more of this rum.
I would agree with that. I'm ready for a proper pour of it.
Same here. Do you want ice cubes, or you want it neat still?
I was promised Millennium Falcon ice cubes.
Yeah, I'm here for that too.
I do have 3x5, nearly 3x5 inch Millennium Falcon ice cubes. All right, we have refilled our glasses here. My R2-D2 is melted, so it just looks like a tomb.
A tomb?
That's what it looks like now. Or maybe the top of a sarcophagus.
That's kind of appropriate for what we're going to start reading, I guess.
It is. But I guess before we get into the serious nature of the text we're diving into, we've been inviting Twitter followers to offer feedback on the works we're discussing. And this week, we heard from I Am a Sophisticate and So Can You podcast, that's at Sophisticate Pod, who said, I read one of Marlon James's other books, A Brief History of Seven Killings, and I think he's a brilliant writer. And I think the entire literary world would agree with I Am Sophisticate there for that one.
Yeah, I responded to I Am Sophisticate on Twitter and said that was also the first book I read by Marlon James. And, I would agree 100%. That's the one that got me into the author in the first place.
Yeah, and that actually kind of is a good segue into the first question we usually start with, which is, do you have any history with the text? Do you have any history with the author? So, Mike, you've read A Brief History of Seven Killings.
Yeah, I learned about this author just a few years ago, and I actually learned about him because I was looking at one of those, in Buffalo, we have a wonderful Babel series that brings in very, very well-known, successful authors speak every year. And so I was looking at all the ones that I'd missed, including Toni Morrison and several other great ones.
Yeah, I missed her too.
And I was intrigued by Marlon James' picture because he looks like a fucking awesome dude. So I started looking up his fiction, and Brief History of Seven Killings had just won the Man Booker Prize, and it sounded awesome. It's about ostensibly the assassination of I keep wanting to say Jacob Marley, but it's Bob Marley. And it's really so much more than that, though. I mean, there's like probably 15 or 20 character perspectives that he juggles throughout the book. And it's all about like what was going on historically and socially and politically in Jamaica around all that happening. And it was just a staggeringly good book. So since then, I've read all his other books, and I teach an article that he published in the New York Times called From Jamaica to Minnesota to Myself. I teach that every year with my 11th graders, and I listen to his podcast that he does, which is called Jake and Marlon Read Dead People, where they talk about dead authors from a different perspective every cast. And I just think he's great. I think Marlon James is one of the most interesting people working in fiction today.
Yeah. Yeah. Sean, how about you?
I had no experience with him at all. It's my first read, and everything Mike just said, I agree with.
You are right to do so.
Yeah. This is
I mean, you know what?
There you go.
Thank you.
What a point.
I will shout out the Babel series too, because there are some awesome people who come through there, and that is so cool. Babel, if you're listening to us, which we know you are, you know, if you ever want to work us into some kind of cross promotion or something.
Just Buffalo is a fantastic literary center downtown.
Absolutely.
And,
Well, and without spending any great deal of time on it, Colson Whitehead was just here last night, and it was a fucking amazing show, and he's an incredibly talented and shockingly funny person. So,
I hate to say it, but you don't always expect that from, like, staggering geniuses of literary merit.
No, he has a second career as a stand-up comedian if he wants it. He is that funny.
Wow. I mean, also a brilliant dude, so it kind of makes sense that he's got the wit to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, it does.
You know, I'm gonna fuck up the title. Black Leopard, Red Wolf. There we go. Was on my to be read pile for a while, and I had brought it up to Mike, and he had mentioned how awesome it was. And then when we were looking for a new book, it had just come across as I was strolling through, you know, literary Twitter and literary Instagram, that the second book in the Dark Star trilogy had come out, and it seemed really interesting from the reviews, you know, telling the story from a different character's perspective, but same events, or similar events. And it seemed like the right time to strike and read. I have not read Brief History by Marlon James, but I don't know why I haven't, except for my to-be-read pile, like all of your gents, is just enormous and keeps getting added to daily.
Embarrassingly huge.
Well, you know, it's the blessing and curse of being an English teacher and then doing literary stuff for fun, right? Like, our piles are going to outlive us at this point.
They
but
certainly
mine
will.
is. Yeah, I could hold up a house's foundation with
Mine is a to-be-read cabinet.
Yeah, I can believe that. Knowing the recording studio you have in your basement that we use, it's down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the reason why I had to switch to ebooks for some things or borrowing more from the library because I'm out of cabinet space, unfortunately.
I'm telling you, the library is a wonderful place.
It is.
Well, you guys are wise because the amount of times I have moved in my life and moved all those boxes of books, it is, not smart.
It's not fun. No.
But it's nice to look at.
Oh, it is.
Oh, for sure it is. I mean, I have a library that's Harry Potter centric upstairs. It's also the guest room. Woe be on anyone who has to stay in my guest room because it's like Harry Potter Legos and Harry Potter illustrated editions and then like some wands and
you
stuff.
won't want for something to read.
Well, it's true. You're always going to be there. But if you don't like it, it's going to be creepy. So, unfortunately. So, you know, I always like when we come to a text with varying degrees of familiarity with the author and with the text. So, I guess I'll start with the genre question, because we have been pretty much a sci-fi podcast up until this book, I think, and we chose this one excited that it's fantasy. So, was there anything else that made you stand up and pay attention concerning the genre of this book when you were reading it?
For me, this is, I think, actually our second fantasy book in a row. Weirdly, we got to get back to the sci-fi stuff.
Oh God, I forgot about The Witcher.
Yeah. But whereas
Sorry,
I bring that up to say this, whereas Witcher is more, traditional sort of medieval European fantasy, which is what most people picture when you mention fantasy fiction. This is fantasy, but after reading the first book, I've always said that it feels more like mythology to me. I feel more like I'm reading mythology. And Marlon James, has spoken about the degree of research into African mythology and folktales and all of that went into writing the series. And it is fantasy in the sense of, there's, the quest and the magic and the usual tropes there. But just with the gods and the demigods and like all of the backstory and, the ancient landscape and an ill-defined ancient landscape too. Not like, fantasy prides itself on its like very sharp, like detailed world building, which isn't
the
to say
Shire had hills, and each hill had a round, and each
here's a description
there
of
are
every.
maps. You're right,
and it's not that Marlon James is insanely detailed here, so I don't mean to say not detailed, but it has a more sort of like surreal, ill-defined dreamscape sort of a feel to it, which I associate with reading like ancient Scandinavian or Greek mythology, where it's sort of like, then you came to like the mountains of such and such and you passed over them and then you were in the land of, that kind of a
Asgard
thing. So,
floated above you. And,
yes.
That's a good take. I was struck by, and you mentioned the folklore or folktale-ish kind of mythology that he draws from, and it almost feels like a I don't know, a realistic take on that kind of storytelling. Like, what would it be like if, like, how like Game of Thrones is to Tolkien, right? More gritty, real, high fantasy. It's more like gritty, real mythology.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a very unique kind of world to get into. And it's gripping. There's a lot of parts where you're just like, shit, that's really interesting, and it just really pulls you in, which is super cool.
Oh, yeah. I think part of what made it so dreamlike was both the narrator's voice, the non-standard English dialect as it's described on the internet, which changes drastically throughout the novel, which I found really interesting for character development. Sagalon starting off as her, what is she, like 11 or something like that? When we see her in the Termite Hill?
Yeah, very young.
Something about it. Yeah,
insanely young, and you can tell she's not encountered anyone who will actually speak to her. But then as she ages, she has that, like, drive to read when she's in the court. And then the narrator's voice becomes much more cogent, and the sentences get longer and that sort of thing. I thought that was just like a brilliant thing to do. And I started with that because not only is the language change, but it's like mythology. And then you get like, coo, cock,
oh my God.
and like grabbed the forest above his cock and his balls. Like that mix of the coarse language,
right,
but like the high mythological elements was really intriguing to me, and like made me feel really many things at one moment.
Right.
Yes.
If Marlon James has been, and he's had a remarkably critically acclaimed career, but if he's been criticized or questioned for anything, it's been the degree of violence and the like extreme content.
Welcome to life.
And language, which, to dudes like us only makes him more interesting. I mean, I'm reading descriptions of, when I knew nothing about the author, Brief History of Seven Killings. And some people are like, I found the violence in this book and the language and the descriptions of sex to be, just more than was necessary. It was gratuitous. And I'm like, fucking sign me up. I'm going to listen to that shit all day,
Yeah. That's why we're a pop culture podcast and not necessarily a high lit podcast, because we're all in for that.
Yeah. Exactly. But I think the great writers aren't afraid to shy away from that either. I mean, you read a Cormac McCarthy novel and it's fucking brutal,
Yeah.
And like you said, that's life. Welcome to life, and so that's definitely here. It has that like epic fantasy mythology feel, but it also gets into that really gritty, in your face realism as well.
I like how you mentioned the perspective too, and like how it evolves. And like the point of view, it moves in and out of first person and third person. And if you're not really following what's going on, it can there are parts where I'm sitting there going like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
And I got to go back and look at it, and I still don't know what the fuck just happened.
First 100 pages were really hard for me.
Oh, but it doesn't let up. No. There are parts where you're like, wait a minute, how did we get from there to here? It's like we walked through a portal and I'm in a different part of the book now.
Dreamlike.
Right? Exactly.
Dreamlike.
Right.
And then you talk about the gratuitousness of the language at times, and I found that at first I'm like, man, it's just like, you really didn't have to keep talking about all this stuff. I get it, dude. Yeah. I totally got it.
Yeah.
But, and then at the same time I started thinking about it, like, if this is really her perspective, it's the, like, almost like commoditization of female genitalia that's sort of like fixated on. Like, that's what she was valued as a young person and growing up, and then continued to be. But then she kind of turned a little bit when she met Kemi, and sort of became more of like, no, this is... The transaction was more in her favor as well. And I think that was just, maybe that's what it was being underscored, is that, I guess, the transactional nature of sex. But
yeah,
it was interesting.
No, and is everything that you guys are saying about this book is, I think, doubly so for the first book, which I'm going to make sure I don't fuck up as well. Black Leopard, Red Wolf. You know, I remember reading that book. Let me put it this way. I found Moonwitch to be relatively easy compared to Black Leopard, Red Wolf. All emphasis, italics, underline on relatively, because it is an incredibly challenging book. But because of, and it was an intentional choice of the author, I think, because of the characters and their storytelling style. From the little bit that we see of Tracker at the end of this book, you know, you get the sense that he's a real fucking Stanley Kowalski, like arrogant fucking son of a bitch. And that narrative style is all throughout that first book. I mean, it's the surrealism of it is ramped up to 11 in that, because he doesn't give a fuck about like going in order and developing a narrative. Like he's all over the fucking map, and it's even more difficult to follow for that reason. And his language is even more coarse because that's the way that he talks, you know, which makes the book very challenging. And this book has, you know, the same stuff, but a little bit less so, I think, because, are we going to say, let's agree on Sagalon? How do you guys want to say it?
I cheated and read and listened to the audiobook.
Okay, and?
For this reason, Sagalon.
Sagalon.
Yeah, and
Sagalon?
Keme.
Okay.
Sagalon.
And Keme?
Keme.
I was right about Keme.
I read that as Keem, literally the entire time.
Now you know how I feel.
Keem came.
But
No, I really, I didn't anticipate it
many
originally.
times.
The number of times, and then the
he came at me with his
the lion cock. We'll get to that.
It was even bigger and more majestic.
Trick of the fur woman is what he says.
Because it happens early. I just like, that's the part where I knew, like, this book, I'm like, all right. When she's journeying north to the North Country and Fasisi the first time with her mistress there or whatever, and she sees Keme in the water, and he's like, he just had another stitch on him, and he's walking with confidence, that big cock swinging between his legs. Right. I'm like, all right.
That's where we're at right now.
Yeah, we're going there. Okay.
But I was making a point, I feel like.
Oh, no, the rum.
Was I? Did it just seem like that because of the rum? What I was saying was... Marlon, and this is true of all of his books, not just the Dark Star trilogy, but, you know, his literary novels as well, in my experience, is that, you know, they're one of those things where, like, as you're reading, you know, you're not always necessarily having fun. Like, it takes work. Right. It's challenging. And it takes a certain kind of reader to want to do that. And it's always after the fact. It's after I finish reading, where I'm sitting there walking around with what I just read. That's when it always hits me. That's when I'm always impressed, which is, you know, the opposite of many books where you're reading and you're like, this is fucking great. Awesome, and you forget it as soon as you put it down.
That's like a Disney movie.
Well, yes, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, you don't oftentimes think of a Disney movie after you leave unless you're making sarcastic references to your children to annoy them.
Exactly.
But with Marlon James, you know, you walk away and you're like, what the all right, so there were these fucking things that ran along the ceiling as if they were walking on the floor, and they would fucking drop down, and they would, you know, you start thinking about that shit and what you just read, and that's when it just fucking, for me at least, that's when it hits you like, damn, this shit is crazy.
It's really stayed with you, yeah.
The dark child that was in her room, I'm like, is this real or not? But no, it was real because afterwards it's
real.
It's like, again, you got to think about it. You got to figure it out. Like, and then you find yourself going back chapters to shit that you had assumed you understood what it was, and you were like, no, I did not get it for what it was. Mm-hmm. It's totally different.
Yeah. For me, it is a sign of a quality book that I really enjoy, and it's changing me when it changes, like, my catchphrases in everyday life. So lately, I've been walking around going, something's going wrong, and I'm like, fuck the gods!
I was hoping it would be that.
There you go.
Nice.
Fuck the gods, woman!
Well, it's better than saying you get your coo cut out.
Jesus. Yeah. There you go.
As well.
Points around like,
I want to know, I want a coo counter for this book. How many times? Because I'm going to start using
into a word processor and just do a Control F, KOO.
If we start a band, we're naming it Coo.
Or a coo counter. Yeah.
Coo counter.
First record, fuck the gods.
Yes, I love it.
Oh my god!
Oh, I love it.
That screams heavy metal. We have to be a
Norwegian
heavy metal band.
heavy metal. Yeah. No, I did find myself in the same way, thinking about the story when I'm not with the story, thinking about the phrases, and just like wondering how it actually would work and like picturing it. So that was the sign for me that, like, I'm really struggling with this book, but he's making me do the work, and it's really paying off as a reader, for sure.
Well, Mike and I had conversations when I was in the midst of it, and you were in it, when I'm like going, like, look at him going, like, man, this is work.
It's a journey, you know, and like I said, it takes the right kind of reader to appreciate it. I mean, when I try to think of, like, who I would compare Marlon James to, I mean, it's going to be writers like, you know, James Joyce, William
First
Faulkner.
one that came to mind.
Yeah.
There once was a Nissan Moo Cow who went moo. First paragraph of Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man.
Yeah.
Felt the same way.
Or Thomas Pynchon. I mean, but also with a heavy dose of, like, Toni Morrison and Cormac McCarthy thrown in for, like, the themes that he gets into. Yeah. But, you know, it's the type of thing where you're aware as you're reading it that you are... You know, I guess it's the opposite of what we talked about in our last cast with The Witcher, where, you know, we said, hey, it was great fun. I mean, it was nothing weighty or great, but it was fun. With Marlon James, you know, reading him is like, okay, it's not always fun. I mean, sometimes it's a lot of hard work, but you're aware that you're reading something great. Yeah. At least that's, you know, how I experience it.
Yeah, I felt very similar. Like, you know, I'm a big fan of Pynchon. And so I've read, you know, Gravity's Rainbow and Crying of Lot 49. Thank you very much. I actually put that on my
Lots of bells today.
Resume for every job I've ever applied to. Read Gravity's Rainbow.
That needs to be the only thing on your resume, right. Honestly.
Please hire me.
I would hire you. And I've failed to read it 3 times.
Yeah. It's worth it eventually, I think. I don't know what I got out of it.
I agree in my experience. I need to not have kids in my house when I finally tackle all of it.
You need to go on like a month-long book sabbatical and just hide out.
Is this what I should read on the airplane to Australia?
Oh, yeah, it's a page turner.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you'll get it done in 24 hours.
Oh, you say I'll get a lot of sleep done is what you're saying.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't want to go too much into the Pynchon because, you know,
we'll say that for
another
conversation.
But you do get the impression that there's so much there that you have to go back for, in the same way that I got with Marlon James. Not just the stream of consciousness, but the use of language to convey a tonal texture of the protagonist's experience that really adds something that most writers can't pull off.
That was an interesting thing to try to like, that takes a while to get your head wrapped around that style. And then I found myself almost thinking that way.
Yes.
Like, you call it a patois?
Patois, yeah. Patois. Yeah. And almost all of his books are written with something. It was obviously Jamaican, a lot of Jamaican patois in the literary books. This is, you know, more of an African. A lot of what I heard in my head is what I remember from the movie Black Panther. Because I was
the audiobook really saved me on that, to be honest, in order to, like, really pronounce, not just... I had a Sagalon correct, but, like, a bunch of the other, like, items and some of the Sangaman I did not have. I wasn't even in the ballpark for the pronunciation. There was more of, like, a slide or a lilt where I would have done, like, a hard Buffalo A or something like that.
I got to a point where I was just like, I'm not going to remember half of these words. I'm just going to have to absorb them as they come. Right. Because there's so much he throws at you at certain points. You're like, shit, there's just a lot.
So, while we're on the subject of pronunciation, I'm curious, what is the official pronunciation of the main antagonist? It's Aesi.
Aesi.
That's not how I read it at all. I kept reading it as I see, like the word I see. You know,
that's how the reader in the audiobook, the official version of the audiobook, reads it. AEC.
AEC.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So my like non-literal, hard to put to words understanding of like the patois would be like when you see two vowels together, you pronounce them separately. Mm-hmm. But when you see like the consonants together, you have to slide them softly. The first consonant is very soft, and the second one is the one you pronounce.
Interesting. Okay.
God knows, fuck the gods, if I'm right. But that might be the title of this podcast episode. Who knows? Probably going to get in trouble with a lot of people. Don't know if I care. But, fuck the gods, Marlon James's book. But so I found that it was just refreshing to have to work at the language in a good way.
Yeah. It's funny. Like I said, I found myself thinking that way. I'd like put a tear on this book and put like an hour in and be like, man, I am like in the zone with this. Mm-hmm. And then I'd have to go and do some menial task in the house. And I'd be like, see the man sitting down doing his work.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, it's in my head. I'm like, oh my God.
This is me using the laundry, not laundry powder.
Yes.
Well, and it's interesting. We said this of Colson Whitehead a few minutes ago, and Marlon James is I would say the same way. I've watched many, speeches or interviews with him on YouTube. I love listening to his podcast.
I gotta listen to that.
He's a very interesting guy who moves very quickly between like extremely intelligent academic and hilarious. Like he is. And it's even all the more charming for his like thick Jamaican accent.
Yeah. But he's have a thing for any accent.
Yeah, I mean it makes everything sound a lot cooler than we sound, But but he's like Colson Whitehead. He's like that, Despite the dark like grimness of all of this, when he talks, he's very lighthearted and he can be very humorous. And,
that's impressive that he's not, the kind of stereotypical downtrodden, like sad, black is my soul sort of writer. And I wonder if that comes from like the Jamaican culture itself, which tends to be, despite being very challenged as a nation, really upbeat in its culture and its, really laid back, not just of the stereotypical stuff, but
kind of roll with it.
Yeah.
And not to go too far down the rabbit hole with this, but, he's also spoken before, including in that article that I mentioned from the New York Times. It can also be very socially conservative because Marlon James, is a gay man and did not get a lot of patience or acceptance for that. And that was one of the things, that when he came to America was part of his journey of finding himself and allowing that part of his identity to, actually come out and not be something that he felt that he had to repress or treat with shame.
You mean like a lion that you don't turn into around other people?
Yeah, you noticed that connection.
I did notice that connection.
Find someone that accepts you for who you are.
That's right.
Allows you to be that person.
That's a really good time to switch over to our second question. We're actually like running through time fast today in the podcast just because there's so much. I thought we could actually do 2 on this. Because the book is A, so long,
right.
B, so dense. But let's focus on the accepting person who allows Keme to be himself. Sagalon is super complex. What part of that character stuck with you the most as you read?
Man, there's so many.
I know it was a hard question.
That's a great question.
And we only have 5 minutes before we have to move on.
Something about this character, out of everything about her, that stands out the most. 600
pages.
Shit. Damn, that's tough. I mean, because she changes so much throughout the book.
So much. I'll fill that space for you so you can think for a sec. So, from an illiterate, Termite Hill living girl who killed her mom, quote unquote, killed her mom in childbirth. Terrible. Terrible. To this powerhouse of a woman who bows to no one, bends no knee, pledges no allegiance to anyone at the end. That's a lot of character development.
Yeah, she's really at least 3 different characters throughout the text. She's the girl with no name.
Yep.
She's the mother of lions, and the handmaiden of the princess.
I believe the phrase is Mother of Dragons.
Well, no, not in this
kidding.
one.
I'm just kidding.
But there are dragons in this book.
There are dragons,
There's
which
a
we
lot
haven't
in
even
this
had a
book.
chance to get to.
There's too much in this book.
Yeah,
That's
there
one of the
really is.
criticisms I have of it.
We could puzzle this book out, and it would look like a CIA like investigation room
with the red string between all the pictures.
God.
For hours, honestly.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be able to do it justice, no matter what we do.
No, never. But we're scratching.
Go read the book, people, and you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
I think you already know our recommendations. We're just jiving on it now.
And then the final character is the don't give any fucks, like 200-year-old like super witch.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, man, I don't know. Out of all three of those characters, maybe I can say which one I thought was coolest.
Works
and
for me.
I kind of like the one who lived in Fasisi, who I think where she discovered who she was, and that's when she like, she really developed that antagonistic relationship with the Aisi.
Yeah.
And the Sengomin, and then had her relationship with Keme, and it was like taken away from her, and then she got it back, but it wasn't the same. But it was really complicated. They fucked a lot. She gave birth to humans and humans
She
and
snuck
lions.
out every night to go to Fight Club.
Yeah, she had some really complex, cool shit. Like super powerful badass at the end that didn't give a fuck. It was kind of like, to me, almost cliche.
Yeah.
I really like the complex Sagalon in the middle.
Yeah.
Mike?
I'm always fascinated by characters that are not good, nor are they bad. They're just real people. And then studying the perspectives of the people around them. Because I think that's more like real life. With Sagalon, throughout the book, we see her just being her. She's variously these different things that Sean just eloquently described. And what interested me is the way in which she'd come up against some people who would be like, this is a horrifying, dangerous witch. At one point, Tracker rightfully points out that she's the only killer in the group. When she's like saying something to criticize him, and he's like, you're the only killer here. But then she's also like hero to hundreds or thousands of women who are like, Moonwitch has, righted these wrongs and done these great things and avenged us and everything. And then to circle back to her perspective, which is like, she's neither of those things. And she becomes increasingly aware that she's motivated by her own obsession for a desire. That's the word she uses, desire for revenge.
Yeah.
And I think that's so like life. People are motivated by very human means, or feelings. And then the world around them like thinks this or thinks that and tries to put a nice, easy narrative on it and like say that person's a hero because blah, 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 or vice versa.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I think you see happening around this character. Those are the characters that fascinate me. Those are the artists that I really admire that can do that so well. And I think that was another triumph of this book for Marlon James.
Yeah. I think the part that probably resonated with me the most was the transition between the caravan to Mantha, the nunnery, with the transition over to Keme and living in Fasisi and realizing that the Aisi has eliminated memory for other people. And like, that's the Sagalon who is both coming into her power, but also a little scared of her power.
Right.
But also not willing to just be taken. There's that interesting dynamic between Sagalon, Keme, and what's Keme's first wife's name? Only wife's name? Yutundu? Is that right?
Sounds right.
There's the way that Marlon James balanced domestic polyamorous relationships, polymorphic human beings who can change into other animals, the whole backstory of Sagalon and her, like, wind, not wind, I am in control, I'm not in control, I want to be a stick fighter who murders people at night and then come back and fuck my husband real good in bed because, like, she owns her body now and enjoys that and wants to have what she enjoys and power over herself. That middle section, like, page 200 to page 350, I think was the most interesting for me because all those things being juggled.
Yeah, it was for me too, because I think that's where the most careful development was being done. I think, and this is not a criticism, by the way, because the book is long enough.
Yes.
But the pacing went into overdrive at a certain point.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It really lingered for a long, long time in all this stuff that you were just talking about, and you as well, Sean. And then all of a sudden it was like, and then her kid died, and she was in a lot of pain, and she wandered off, and then like she hung out with monkeys and like lived in the ruins of a castle.
That's 100 years,
right? Yeah, exactly. And then even when the quest picks up, like the quest is most of that first book, as I recall, and then it's maybe 150 pages at the end of this book. Again, not a criticism.
No.
But I think the reason maybe that section resonated the most with all of us, because I share that view, is because that was the one where the pacing was most drawn out and the most development was being done.
Yeah, that makes sense. Guys, we've blown through 38 minutes now. It's time to get to that lightning round. Right. Jam your bells.
Let's do it.
All right. So if you've never listened to the podcast before, A, what the hell are you doing? B, there's 13 other episodes. Go back. C,
good points.
The points mean nothing. This is just for pride. Really, that's all it is.
And pride is everything.
That's all we have here at Nerds of the Old Republic.
It's true.
Yeah. All right. So first question. First to ring in and correct answer gets the point. Which fantasy series is Moon Witch often compared to?
Oh, Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. A Song of Ice and Fire.
I would have accepted either. Every internet article said Game of Thrones because they're fucking noobs.
Sorry, guys.
So Marlon James started a lot of that himself because he sort of tongue-in-cheek said in an interview, like as he was describing it, it's.
I am the African.
He said it's sort of. He said the plot is sort of the African Game of Thrones. And then that got picked up because, of course, anything that they can associate with Game of Thrones, they will.
Oh, yeah.
And so Marlon James, he's laughed about that many times. And anybody who reads this is, I guess, the power struggles. I mean, if you really want to look into the themes, you could make those connections. But in terms of like the writing and the tone and many, many things, it's very, very different. It's not a correct comparison.
And don't worry, Nerd Nation. Eventually, we'll get to Game of Thrones. We'll get there.
We will. We don't want to be white noise. So,
Martin, we know you're listening, and we know you're not working on your next book. You're just listening to us, and we'll get you.
Maybe this is what will motivate George R. Martin.
Yeah.
We will do a podcast when you release the final book.
We'll allow you on the podcast when you release the final book.
We wanted to bump Bill for that one.
Well, yeah, we've had Bill Murray sitting in the back for a while. So
sorry, Bill. We're going to keep bumping you.
Sit down, Bill. All right. Question number 2. I got to give Mike a sec because he's in the middle mid-sip of rum here. How many Sangomen can you name or describe?
Oh, fuck.
No. This is Sean recovering from the last few episodes.
The Dark Child, who was a spider type thing.
Sure.
There's the one that shoots fire.
Sure.
There's
I call him Human Torch.
There's the one that's really big and they think is the leader or whatever, but is just kind of like the Hulk or like the Thing from Fantastic Four.
All right, I'll accept
the
that.
Big one.
The Thing, yeah, because he's described as like tree-like or rock-like alternately.
There's the one that can phase in and out of reality and kind of moves around. There's the one that I think there's one that does like lightning, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'll give that. Yeah.
Give me a second. There's the one with something with its tongue and its mouth.
Are you referring? No, I was going to make a sex joke, but I can't.
No, this one didn't have a sex joke because there's a lot of these Sangomen throughout.
There are
the book.
A shit ton. So that's why, like, I feel when you peter out, Mike might be able to add. And
I'm trying not to confuse it with the fish woman or the water sprite or whatever that thing was.
That's an automatic loss. Mike, can you add?
That's all I got. I'm sorry.
So when you say Sangomen, because all these words start to blend together for me at a certain point. Those
would be the mythical or magical creatures that work for the king.
Okay.
So they would be anybody who hunted Sagalon with magical powers.
Did you mention the ceiling crawlers? Was that
Dark Child?
Oh, you did. Okay. I don't know. I'm not gonna do the awkward thing where I go and make the audience listen to me do that. So.
Well, I just did. Damn it!
Did you?
Well, no. It's hard. You had 5. Yeah. And there's really like 2 others. There's the bat one at the end, and then there's the clay-faced one with the white hair. that haunts her.
Yeah.
Oh,
that is like
yeah.
similar to the AEC,
Right.
but
Yeah.
not quite. So
She describes there's like 9 of them or something originally when she
Yeah.
gets to Fasisi, and I think she pretty much like kills them all on
Yeah.
that trip to the nunnery.
which I picture as like a Kill Bill moment, to
Oh,
be honest,
yeah.
except she doesn't know what's happening.
Is it
I
that sound?
love that. Yeah, the alarm goes off.
Zooms in on her eyes.
The caravan starts on fire, and then she like hops out, but then she wakes up in the crater.
That scene, real quick. I thought
Yeah.
that was like another one of those fucking fever dreams. I'm like, she wakes up and she's looking at the burning like princess, and she sees the baby on her. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
god,
I thought that was a
this
fever
can't
dream.
be real. But she saved the linen, and then it's like, oh, the linen that she had all drugs. Wait a minute, that becomes the lingo later on in the story. Like, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
There's like, this book is like, it's Sagalon's story, and there's like at least 10 other novels attached to her story that just come in and out of it, which can be frustrating because you're like, wait, fuck, no, stay with that. But he doesn't.
No.
Ah!
To purposely irritate you, but it's also, drawing back on my undergrad work over at Geneseo, it's also very much literature of the Caribbean, where you will have a non-linear story structure that alludes to other stories you're supposed to be knowledgeable of and draw on, kind of like the way we would throw around like cultural references to movies and TV shows.
Okay.
One is expected to know the oral tradition of Jamaica in order to follow these sorts of oral or, of mythical Africa in order to follow these things. Yeah. Shout out to SUNY Geneseo there for that one. All right, last one. I'm sorry, you've already lost.
I have already lost.
Do you want to play this one out?
I can try to make the score respectable.
Okay, that's fair.
You can try.
I can try.
I have the high ground.
Oh man, this is like a
Give up.
wait. We need like a whoa.
They literally just started standing, and spurs appeared out of nowhere.
Tuco, what are you doing here?
Okay, you got to give. This is like Price is Right here. Give me the over/under on how many kids Sagalon quote drops out.
4.
Mike,
5.
answer is 7.
Oh!
Mike gets his point redeemed.
Oh!
Humanity.
Wait a minute. I thought it was 2 human and 2 lion.
But there's more when they're fucking that are like stillbirth.
But those are the first wife's children.
No. Doesn't she? All right, let me triple check.
No.
Give the point to Mike. This might be the rum talking.
Adam, you're
This
the
might be the
host,
rum
and
talking.
you said 6, so 6 it is.
My answer is absolute. I am inevitable. Also fallible.
All right, Thanos.
All right. Yeah, exactly. Speaking of snapping and ending things, we've reached the end of our show tonight, gents. So I appreciate your time tonight. I appreciate the rum. Oh my gosh, that was so good.
That was
I did really
delicious.
good rum.
Outstanding.
Yeah. And if you like what you heard tonight, I recommend picking up more of the Dark Star trilogy. Pick up Black Leopard, Red Wolf, or Moon Witch Spider King if you haven't yet. I think you know where I'm going. I'm a yes, but you got to give yourself like a month and a half to get to read this book well.
Yeah.
So, I'm obviously a yes. I worship Marlon James and all of his books. A couple quick points to add. There's one more in the Dark Star that's coming out.
Yeah.
And the rights to the series were also purchased by Michael B. Jordan to be developed.
Badass.
And I don't know if they've said more
He
details.
just wants to be Keme.
I don't know if he just has them or if there's actually something in production, a movie, a TV show. I don't know. But Michael B. Jordan does have the rights to the series. And that seems right. That seems like, I feel comfortable with that.
I wonder how much full frontal nudity there will be.
If it's on HBO Max, all the full frontal nudity.
Indeed.
So much lion cock.
Oh, it better be huge.
Yeah. Trick of the bush woman.
Oh no, bigger.
So Sean, you're
Yeah, I'm I'm gonna agree with you guys.
Right.
It's rare, but I'm going to say challenge yourselves. Try to read this and the other book in the series. I am a fan now. Thank you, Mike, for bringing this into my life.
appreciate
It's
that.
great. I really, again, it was work, but I enjoyed it. It was good work. It was like I knew I was doing something worthwhile.
It's the work where you get calloused hands and you look down and you
Right.
appreciate what you got.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm definitely a yes as well. And I appreciate Mike mentioning Marlon James and just really grateful for the cornucopia of stuff that he brought to my reading experience. if you find that you read this and you need a little bit of levity, I absolutely recommend watching Nick Cage's Jiu-Jitsu on Netflix.
Oh, God.
Because that's our next cast. And pour yourself a big old glass of what the fuck are we going to talk about here? Because we've already talked about what kind of podcast this is going to be, and it's going to be something.
It's going to be a little different than this one.
Something's
Gonna
the
be a
word.
thing.
Yes, something is the word.
I recommend watching it at 1.25 speed on Netflix. You can just click that little speed dial and up it, because that's the only way I made it through. But that's it for us tonight. We appreciate your time and we thank you. We would love it if you would rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We have a love-hate relationship with Spotify, but that is what it is. So wherever you catch us, please rate and review. Find us on the socials at Nerds of Old Republic. Tell your friends and stay nerdy, y'all. Have a good night.
And fuck the gods.
Fuck the gods.
Cheers.
Cheers.